Studies show that 80% of our thoughts are negative. Did you realize that every day your head is filled with negative ideas? What if you could change that? What if you could change that and focus on more positive and success versus negative and failure? In this next clip from my recent keynote in Las Vegas, I talk about how the brain works. I talk about the positive and the negative and the way people think and how to change that and shift that. Keep watching to better understand how you can completely shift your mindset and change the way you think.
But every once in a while, I don't do a time and motion study, I do a thought and motion study. I think about what I think about. And when you think about what you think about, it's pretty scary. Harvard came out with a study that said 47% of our day is unconscious, which means we do things every single day and we don't even what? We don't even think about them, right? So when you consciously think, there was actually a study that came out, you can look this one up, where they gave men and women, I think it was a total of like 200, and they put them in a room to be alone with their thoughts for 15 minutes. And they actually said you have one of two choices in that room. You can sit silent for 15 minutes, or you can subject yourself to electric shock. And they actually showed them what the shock was prior to going in. They all got shocked prior to going in this 15 minutes. And 100% of the participants said they would pay money to never be shocked at that level again. Then they all put them in a room. 67% of males shocked themselves before 15 minutes. Like 36% of females shocked themselves. So thinking about what we think about isn't always a good proposition, because sometimes it can be scary, right? So begin to do that thought and motion study. So the other day I was coming home from the airport and everybody's tied to one of these things, thinking about where my mind goes. Everybody's tied to one of these things. I called my wife on the way home from the airport and she didn't answer her phone. My first thought was what? Yeah, she's dead. Something's wrong, right? She's dead. You ever go there? Like, Dan, to your point, you created all these scenarios that have no recollection or not even true to what the situation is. So now I'm thinking, I'm a little concerned. 2 minutes later, I'm 3 minutes into this whole thing. I call her back. She doesn't answer her phone. Now I go from concerned to pissed. I'm mad at her, haven't even spoke to her. Right? Now here's what I think in my mind. She's probably mad at me. She's mad at me because I have been on the road all these times and she's at home taking care of the kids. I got a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old. 2 boys are running in a million different directions. She's mad at me. And then I go, she has no right to be mad at me. That's stupid. Like, I'm out here building a business, providing for my family. She's mad at me. Now I'm really mad at her. The third time I call her, she answers her phone. I'm already mad. Here's my thing. Where in the F have you been? I know that's not right, but that's what happens. Here's what she says. It was about 3:30 in the afternoon. She said, it's a nice day. Both the boys actually got out of school without any practices. We're out in the yard playing with the dogs. My phone was on the kitchen counter. What in the F is your problem? Right? You create that whole scenario. $73.58 later, we all made up at the florist, all right? But you create that whole scenario where I could have said, she's probably outside, nice day. You know, get out of the frozen tundra, she's probably outside, but I didn't. I went to that whole scenario, created that everything, because if you do that thought and motion, a lot of the times we will go to unconsciously, we'll go to the negative. Now, here's the interesting thing. Our mind, go back to those slides, our mind thinks in 3 different buckets: the present, the future, and the past. Here's the interesting thing. Studies show that when we're trying to create the new future, when we're trying to continuously do this organic growth, when we're trying to do the things that we want to do and have, double this room in 5 or 10 years or whatever the mission is, here's what happens unconsciously a lot of the times. Our mind does this. It loops in the past. Our mind will loop. So we'll start with the present. We might do a SWOT analysis or whatever the heck we do. But then when we're trying to create the future, our mind loops in the past, and our past is a really good negotiator. And our past will begin to convince us why we can't do things where? In the future. Right? And so I'm not a forget about the past type of guy. I'm only bring the past forward if it's going to positively influence the future. But don't let the past dictate the future, because the past can't see it. But a lot of times this is what happens, and we do it, and a lot, again, not this room, but a lot of people, when ideas come up and we start thinking about things, they'll immediately go to, well, that's not possible, or we've always done it that way, and so how do we get out of that, and how do we create, making sure that we're consciously staying in the yes and mode, the yes and formula? Can we do that? Yeah, and we can do this. Can we do that? Yeah, we can always vet it later, but a lot of times ideas die immediately versus allowing themselves to vet out. So as we're looking, and by the way, I'm fascinated by statistics and fascinated by people, fascinated by stats. They say that 50% of our past, 50% of our own past is made up. I didn't believe that statistic until I was in a social setting with my wife. I'm telling a story about the time we were somewhere. I get about halfway through it, and my wife says, Chad, we weren't even in that city. They weren't even there. That couple wasn't even there. It just sounds better, right? Over the years, that story has just grown. And so I'm saying that there it goes. My past is made up because it has to fit where we're at. We have to sleep with ourselves. We have to feel good with ourselves, put our head on the pillow. So today, as we're looking at this, as you're thinking about engagement, again, I'm not a forget about the past, but if we're on the interstate out here, if we're on the 15 or the 215 and we're driving 100 miles an hour, should we spend most of our time looking in the windshield or the rear view? Where should we spend most of our time? Looking in the what? Windshield, right? A lot of times, unconsciously, if we don't catch ourselves, when we're looking at the future, our eyes and our picture is on that rear view. So don't forget about it. Bring the past forward if it makes sense on where it is you're going with engagement, with organic growth as you move forward.
If you found this helpful, watch my next video on how to get ahead of 99% of people starting today.